Hi friends, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how we are going to make a 5-section or point value scale and how to use different tints and shades to make our disco ball look sparkly. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a cup of water, a paper towel, some brushes. So you can get a bigger one and you can also get a smaller one for the smaller areas. And then you want to get your paint. Now, anytime that you're mixing tints and shades, you're going to need white and black, and then whatever hue or color straight off the color wheel that you would like to make that image. So I chose violet, but you can pick any color that we have available that is on the color wheel. So no browns, tans, it has to be colors that are on the color wheel for this particular project. So you'll notice that I have my white, black, and purple on the edges of my paper plate. And when I poured it out of the bottle, I only put about the amount of a quarter or like a 25-cent piece on the plate, and it kind of spreads out a little bit, and I want to make sure I only put a little bit so that I have enough room to mix. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting my hue. My hue is step number 3, and it is right in the center, and as I said before, that is my pure color right out of the bottle, and that is the one from the color wheel. Okay, so now that I have that color, I am going to paint it in different areas all over my disco ball. Now I'm actually noticing I'm having a little trouble staying inside the lines there, so I'm going to switch to a brush that's a little bit smaller. And with these, because I want those geometric shapes to be nice and crisp, I am going to outline first and then fill in the shape. So I will do this all over the disco ball. I just want to make sure that I am not putting the same value next to each other ever, and that I'm getting a little bit of this number 3 value, the hue, all over the place. Okay, now I don't want this to be the world's longest video, so I am going to stop here, but I would like you to maybe put one here, 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 one here. You get the drift. Okay, so now I want to start to make my tints. So whenever you make a tint, you want to take a little bit of your hue and put it in one spot. So we're not putting any white into the actual purple paint or violet paint, and then a little bit of white into there. So pretend that these are like a buffet or things at a salad bar. You wouldn't go over there with a fork and just start eating, right? You would scoop a little onto your plate. That's basically what we're gonna do, because we don't want to contaminate those colors or get other colors mixed into them. And at a salad bar, nobody wants your germs on their salad, so that's why you scoop it onto your plate. So think about it that way. So then I am going to paint that value in there. So this is definitely a tint, but it is not as light as I could go. Now you'll notice here where it's getting a little fuzzy, I can get more paint. If I'm having trouble doing that, I can just mix a little bit more. And I also want to make sure that when I'm mixing, I'm always pulling my paint toward the center until there's no more swirls. If I mix it and swirl it around so much, it's going to actually absorb into the paper plate, and then I won't have enough paint to put on my paper. If I were using a plastic palette, this would be less of a problem because it wouldn't absorb into the plastic, but it's still a good practice to kind of make it into more of like a pile. And again, I'm trying to put values, this number 2 value, this tint, kind of spread evenly throughout my entire disco ball. So I don't want to ever have the same value next to another square with that same value. Okay, and again, I'm not going to have you watch me do the whole thing. I'm just going to do a couple quick, I would do here, maybe I would do one here, maybe I do one here, maybe I do one here. So now I'm going to make my next lightest tint. So I can take that same value and I can just add more white to it. Now there's a little trick to make sure that you have enough contrast or difference between your values. You mix your color and then you hold the brush with the color on it over the value you already made. If you squint or close your eyes halfway and you can see the difference between the color on the brush and the color on the paper, then you know you have enough contrast. If you don't, then what you want to do is just go back in and add a little bit more white. So now, again, same as before, I'm going to paint that number 1 lightest tint all over. Now, if I wanted to, if you're up for a little bit of a challenge, you can mix some tints on here a little bit lighter if you wanted to make sort of like a -1 tint so that we really have a lot of contrast. But since this is sort of a beginner project, as long as you have 5 values and you've mixed them really well, I'll be really happy with that. So again, we're going to spread this around, and again, you would be the one painting in the squares, but for time's sake, I'm just going to put a dot where I would put that. Now, pretend that I've done all of my hue and all of my tints. Now I need to wash my brush, so I'm going to hold my cup. I'm going to scrub my brush on the bottom of the cup. Then I'm going to wipe it on the side. I'm not going to do the tap where I get water everywhere. And then I'm going to dry my brush on the paper towel. Then I'm going to start mixing shades. So I'm going to take some violet and the tiniest bit of black, and I'm going to swirl it around, pulling it into the middle. And let me test that out. And so now I have sort of a nice plum color. Okay, so it's a nice shade. And again, I'm going to paint squares in all different values, and I'm going to spread that value all over the place. I'm going to make sure there's enough contrast between them, and it's going to just really make it look so sparkly because it's going to look like the light is hitting it in different ways on those little mirror squares that are on a disco ball. Okay, again, you're going to paint all the squares, but I'm just going to kind of mark off where I might want to put that shade number 4 so that we can do this a little bit quicker and you can get to painting. Okay, now for my final shade, I'm going to just add a little bit more black to the shade that I already had, and I'm going to paint it on that square, make sure there's enough contrast. And now I am going to paint that same value, that nice dark value, on all of those squares. And again, for time's sake, I am going to put that value throughout, but you are going to be painting all of the squares to make sure there's enough contrast. If you have any leftover squares in the end, you can always go back in and mix more tints and shades. Just always make sure that anytime you switch your shades or your tints, that you wash your brush by holding the cup and scrubbing it on the bottom, wipe it on the side. When you're done and it's time to clean up, this would go in the trash. Brush is in the dirty brush cup, and this goes on the drying rack. Have fun and take your time. It'll be worth it.